Robbie Rob, the official X101.5 midday complete waste of time. Coming up, Sublime, also Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Scar Tissue, and of course at 3 o'clock, Doug will have all the fun and play the new Creed song Higher for you, because I lost the coin toss.
X101.5, I'm Doug, and I have something special for today. Seems like since the time I moved into town, we've had something from Creed on this radio station. The town that started a quadruple platinum selling artist. I got a brand new song from them now. The song is named Higher. First chance you've had to hear it. Here it is, Creed, Higher. Brand new song from Creed on X101.5, where the new rock hits first.
It's amazing, kind of overwhelming in a way. I mean, we started with 100 fans, grew to 1,000, grew to 2,000, grew to 4,000, 5,000. You know, here we get off a plane and 5,000 people waiting for you.
Here we got out of the airplane, and there was immediately some press and some cameras and some fans out there. So that was a really warm reception.
Yeah, we knew that the ticket sales were doing good, and the record was doing good. And, just walking around, we got a good vibe, and everybody around knows that the concert's coming.
I'm really excited about it. It should be a lot of fun.
They just told us that the first place we're in had sold out. When you play arenas, usually they'll cut it in half until you sell more tickets, and they just keep moving the stage back. So that happens a lot in bigger venues. But really changing the venue from place to place doesn't happen that often.
Just have to see what happens. Supply on demand.
Yeah, if the demand requires more, then we'll do more. If not, we'll just stay the same.
It gets tiring, but each city offers something new for us, and it's exciting. You bought a little guitar, didn't you?
Yeah, I bought a little guitar, and we just went around looking at antique stores around here. So we bought new houses in America. We need to fill them up with stuff.
We met in Tallahassee, Florida, and Scott and Mark went to school together actually in Orlando, the singer and him, and met up again in Tallahassee. Just the two of them started writing together, and they were looking for other members to complete the band.
We kind of got a music scene going, like I guess it was late '86, early '87. That wasn't around for like a good 5 or 6 years. There was nothing. I mean, if there wasn't a band playing at Bullwinkle's, that was pretty much it.
In Tallahassee, there's probably an overabundance of local entertainment that's good. So for the bands to start out, they really got to want to play. They have to play because they want to play. It takes a while before they're going to actually make money playing the bars in Tallahassee.
I think most of the businesses or the clubs were always targeted toward the college students. So that being said, the music scene was not great at the time because the college students just wanted to party, they just wanted to hear some music, and they really didn't care. They weren't sitting there looking for phenomenal lyrics or anything. They just wanted a party band. The scene was just hideous. I remember Creed playing the Mill Bakery and Eatery parking lot just to get a gig, and I mean, just bizarre places that they would play just to get exposure. I mean, there's just not great venues at the time.
There are basically two scenes. There's a very college-oriented scene, which is peopled by musicians who have been in band after band. It's sort of, they will play with a certain group of people under one name, while another band plays under another name. Then someone will graduate, or someone will move on, someone will go back to doing whatever they do as their day job, and the remaining members of the two bands will get together and form another band. And there's that will be the underground scene. Then there are the people who form with the intent of becoming better known, becoming stars, getting out of the local scene.
Yeah, I mean, we had heard that the record was selling really good, and it just went triple platinum here.
I was managing another nightclub in town called Fat Tuesdays downtown, and some of them were a part of a group called Baby Fish Mouth.
That's when they had met Scott Phillips, their drummer, and I came in a little bit later.
When you're managing a club and it's busy, you're not one of these people who stop and listen to music, but I've always enjoyed them. They were a good cover band. They played a lot of covers, and they did some original stuff, but the guys were really nice kids, you know.
And I was in another band, and that band had broken up, and they invited me in.
So I called them, and they're like, well, we're not Baby Fish Mouth anymore. This particular person said, you know, I was in it, but I'm in this new group now, and we just come together. We might be interested in playing. I was like, sure.
You know, every show is going to be an intense, loud rock show.
We were expecting about 3,000-4,000 people for that party, and I was like, yeah, it'd be great. And so they came and played, and they did a lot of original stuff, and I didn't even recognize them at first. And then they seemed to start drawing a crowd more and more towards their stage of the people over there.
I went and saw them one night right down the street here. The band was full of energy. They started out by playing their own material in their own way, and right from the get-go, people that saw them enjoyed their show, had a good time. People were dancing and having a great time when they saw them. The band, even though they were new, you could tell that they had a certain sound they wanted to be.
You know, we're intense about what we do.
And the band starting out, they've got thousands of dollars invested in their equipment. Every penny they make every night is already spent, I'm sure. So they're not making any money really when they're starting out. They're still paying for their equipment. So whether they can afford a sound man or not at that time, I'm not sure. Then later they hooked up with a local fellow, Dave Hart, Premier Sound and Lights. And he does a real good job. He's mixed a lot of the clubs in town. He knows the nuances of each particular building and how to make them sound good here as opposed to down the street. And when he got their sound going, they just took off from there.
First time we ever did sound for them was at a place called Fat Tuesdays. It was during the Mardi Gras celebration. And we had to set up in the middle of a hotel lobby, which it was like a hotel/club. The club was in the back where all the cool bands and all was playing, and we were young, nobody knew us, so we had to set out in the middle of the lobby with people walking around, you know, with briefcases and all that, looking at us like we're crazy or whatever. So by the end of the night, after we got finished playing, all the people had moved from the back room all the way to the front, so that was really cool.
I'm kind of embarrassed to say, you know, we only paid them like $300 that time, you know, and that was their first type gig. But then, now they're too large for me to try to book anywhere I probably would work.
The first original set was the Fat Tuesdays show. They never really actually did many cover tunes when I was mixing for them. I mean, one or two here and there, and that was about it. As far as like their cover days and all, that was back before all this. I mean, they really didn't play out stuff like that. My Own Prism was at Fat Tuesdays. I mean, everything, pretty much the whole album was already written. I mean, of course, they restructured, redid this throughout the year that they played it, but basically it was, like I said, the album plus or minus a few songs that didn't make it. I mean, they added a couple that they didn't play at the very beginning, but My Own Prison was, they started playing it when I first met them. That was one of their first songs. Of course, it was a little rough around the edges the first time I heard it, and they structured it, and it's not far from where they first started from, but it's pretty much, you know, where they first started, but a little different.
Comparing them to all the other bands that played here around the same time, there was a little, the bar sales were a little better, and the crowd energy was definitely a lot higher. People were dancing more, jumping up and down more, people were applauding more. There were a lot more people that you could see were just there to see the band. They were just there watching the band, not drinking and socializing, as most of the people here would be.
That's how the music scene was. It was basically dead, and we kind of rejuvenated it a little, you know, and got lucky and had a band like Creed to be there, and that really, you know, kind of kicked it.
You know, I wrote these songs for me, and whatever people take from that is what it is. I wouldn't like to put myself on some kind of pedestal that I can influence young people or make people think a certain way. I think my whole attitude is just to make people think.
and those guys write from their heart. Because I respect people's music ability and what they feel in their heart and what they bring out. My own Prism, I mean, that's theirs. That's their monument to music, you know, and it was very cool.
And whatever conclusions they draw, whatever ways that the songs or the music hits them on whatever level, I think is awesome, just as long as it hits them.
I know that Scott Stapp is very much influenced by The Doors and by Jim Morrison. I don't want to propagate a rumor, but it's been said to me that one of his considerations for moving to Tallahassee was the fact that Jim Morrison attended Florida State. And that, I think, has always offered kind of a mystique to the town. I'm a huge Jim Morrison Doors fan myself, and I definitely see the attraction.
Well, Mark, the guitar player, is definitely from the metal side. I mean, he's definitely loves the old metal from the 80s and the old hardcore, and that's where I guess the edginess of the music comes from. Scott Stapp and Scott Phillips, the drummer, and Brian Marshall, they pretty much like a wide variety of music, especially the drummer, Scott Phillips. He listens to unbelievable amounts of different kinds of music. But as far as those three guys, they listen to basically, you know, your modern rock stuff, your pop rock, your radio played stuff, and like your classic rock kind of music, stuff like that. But Mark pretty much was the metalhead in the band, and that's where he gets his guitar riffs from and all that. And you don't hear that today. That's another thing about the band. You don't really hear the old metal, like guitar strong bands anymore like that, where they throw little riffs in there. Basically, it's just chord grunge, you know, distortion, just chords. Well, Mark puts a little bit of the old pizzazz of the 80s in there, I guess, and puts little riffs and little hooks and stuff, and I really appreciated that. I really made Creed cool.
You know, as long as it's not just background music, as long as it's much more than that, and feelings, I think that's my main motivation. You know, not so much to change the way people think, but just to incite thinking, you know.
We're sitting in Floyd's Music Store in Tallahassee, Florida, where it all started for Creed. Much like many other local bands, the guys kind of got together and started doing the smaller rooms around town. Their manager, Jeff Hansen, had a promotion position here, which kind of helped their access towards this room. First time they ever played here, just much like any other bands, you know, there's a million things going wrong. But the thing that I noticed about Creed is they're very intense guys, and they maintained their decorum, you know, throughout the problems. And it was really only the people who were in the know, you know, technically speaking, who could pick up any, you know, any problems that were occurring. But it was, you know, it was right at the time when there seemed to be a void in the industry. The Alice in Chains started to die down and falling out. The grunge scene has started to drop off, and yet Creed came along. They had a sound that was heavy like Tool and, you know, Metallica-ish, yet it was still very accessible as far as the radio station goes, and, you know, anybody could pick it up and listen to it without being, you know, it was too, you know, it wasn't too headbanging, too thrashy type stuff, but it had a lot of drive to it, you know. They appeal to this fan base. This is this region here is a, you know, 9-to-5 blue-collar working crowd, you know, and they want to listen to some music and blow off some steam, and Creed seemed to fill that niche very well. They have very emotion-driven songs, and it was easy for this audience to identify, you know, at least one segment of the song to something in their particular lives. Last time we had the pleasure of Creed was December 1997. They did a special surprise show. It was a benefit for the Children's Miracle Network, which is a Christmas philanthropy. They raise money for the kids who don't have cash at Christmas time to do presents. And we did a special day of show announcement, a special concert announcement on the radio station. And I believe it took about 2.5 hours to sell the show out. So, and they played before a packed house.
They had gone away and done their first U.S. tour. I think they'd also done some European dates. I'm not exactly sure the size of the tour before they came back. And they came back and they played Floyd's Music Store, which was where they had really gotten their start as far as a live band. And they brought what they could. The room was probably not as big as some of the stages that they'd played, but they brought a light show that was just amazing. very stark, monochromatic, bright white lights and fog, which doesn't sound like much, but the way it was used. And I saw a band come onto the stage. The last time I had seen them, they were a band. The time before that, they were a local band. And in the 3 times that I had seen them, they went from being a local band to being a band on the rise. And this time, when they came out, they were rock stars. And they put on a show that just, I mean, put me in chills. They all had very visible personas that you could see. They seemed just larger than life. And it was kind of, it was just an amazement and kind of a pride in the fact that maybe I had some little hand and my station had, you know, an even bigger hand in getting them there. The regret that I knew that I might not be seeing them that close again. And just the, what's the word I'm looking for? The vicarious thrill of knowing these guys are going to do it. And I admire and I envy them. What's ahead of them? What's obviously, I mean, they were exploding out of the room. And it was obvious that they were bigger than the room and they were going on to bigger and brighter things.
You cannot talk to a local band here in Tallahassee without them mentioning Creed's album, that their album sounds as good as Creed, or we've been playing as long as Creed, or we're better than Creed, or it's something to do with Creed. You can count on it that will come up within the conversation.
There's venues, there's radio stations, and there's bands. However, it's very difficult to get them all 3 to work in collusion, and so there's potential. I mean, Creed broke out of here, and this is a college town, so that makes it feasible for anybody with a marketable product to do the same thing. We have a very strong radio station, X101.5, and they do a very good job of backing the local music scene.
I was very impressed the first time I heard the music of Creed. We've been involved in some manner or another with Creed since the very first cassette they brought in, which was recorded off of a radio set to the side of their practice room. Robbie Robb was in charge of our specialty show for local music and unsigned bands at the time. He started playing some of that, still has a copy of it if you'd believe it.
They sent me what was the first recorded version of My Own Prison, which at the time was a little bit darker as a song and about a minute longer than most people have heard it because it was pre-radio edits. And the minute I heard it, I knew it had to get on the air.
It began taking off both on the air and in clubs around town. And the words meteoric rise would pretty well sum it up.
No, it wasn't like that. It was step by step over 4 years. It wasn't.
It's pretty gradual, but we were just so busy on the road, especially in the States for the first 2 years. It was real gradual for us, but I don't think we could have really had it any other way. We've always just driven for further accomplishments for the band.
Our former program director, Rick Schmidt, who's now at WPLA in Jacksonville, he heard the music, realized that it was something that he could put on the air and have great success with. Not just because they're local, though that does factor in, but mostly just because of how strong the song My Own Prison was.
Heard about the band, it was early 1996. I was working at a radio station, WXSR, X101.5 in Tallahassee. And some of the staff members had come in to me talking about this great local band that was playing. And they were named Creed, and I had never heard of them, but somebody brought me a cassette of the band, and there was a song, My Own Prison, on it, and another song called Blistered. And as a matter of fact, I still have the tape somewhere in my drawers here, but one of the songs was really great, one of the songs was pretty awful, but they were, the only thing I remembered about the band was the songs were really long. And then they, a few weeks later, brought me in a different version of what they had after we kind of made some contact with them. And suddenly this band Creed was on the radar because we started playing a song, My Own Prison.
What I think made them stand out most of all was Scott Stapp, and his voice was just as impressive as it is now. Their tightness was a little less. Obviously, they were in the formative stages. The musicianship was there. You could see the raw talent, but the voice was very much a standout thing.
When I first met them, they stood out because they were like one of the only bands from Tallahassee that actually looked like a real band. They actually played the part of a real band. Plus, when their music started playing, when they started playing the kind of music that they played and everything that they did and their stage presence, it was the only band that I actually raised an eyebrow to because, I don't know, they just stood out and their music was different from anything I've heard before. And it was a good gel. The band gelled. And it was one of my favorite bands to mix at the time, because everybody else was trying to go for what was played on the radio and everything. These guys really didn't care about that, believe it or not. They didn't. They wasn't going for the radio thing. They were going from their heart. And so that was really cool. I could see that, and I felt that. And when I was mixing for it, it made it a lot of fun. And I incorporated the way I mixed for them into that. So that was really cool.
I just remember we had been playing the song. We started in January of '96. We started playing this song, and they played a gig about 3 or 4 weeks prior to that, maybe 2 weeks prior to that. And 80 people showed up. Okay. Started playing the song My Own Prison. 6 weeks later, 700 people were at the show. That's a really good feeling, but even more so when they played the song, we were at the show, we're standing up on the stage, just kind of looking out at the crowd. And they kick in with the song, and everybody sings it. Everybody knows the words. You kind of get the hair stands up kind of thing. It's like, wow, this is really amazing, because you just know you had impact on these people's lives. Not only the band having the impact, but also certainly from a believer in the band. That's just a phenomenal feeling.
I think we're not huge media bands, so nobody treats us any different than a normal person, because nobody really recognizes us to that extent where we have to shy away from going in public places. Maybe if you go to the shopping mall, 1 or 2 kids will recognize you, but it's not overbearing.
Airplay is important in different ways. It can be, depending on the type of band that you are. I think in the situation of Creed, it certainly was, because over time, radio airplay has really benefited them more than anything. They're not an MTV band. They're not a cultish enough band to have their own following. They are a great radio band. So in their situation, I think it did help a lot. Having radio support from not only our station, but 98 Rock in Tampa, from Zeta in Miami, from JRR in Orlando, from the Crow in Daytona Beach, all these Florida radio stations, it made for a big impact in presenting it to the record companies that, here's this band that nobody's ever heard of, but man, they're getting a ton of airplay. Makes the job for the record company that much easier to, present a product to other radio stations. So in their case, it certainly was important, and I think, over time, it really has developed that they are a great radio band. They're not an MTV band. They're not Limp Bizkit. They're not a band like G Love and Special Sauce that it just has their own following. They are a radio band, so in their situation, yeah, it's certainly important. Oh, I loved it. I personally enjoy the music of Pearl Jam, Stone Temple Pilots, the corporate rock type of stuff. So it was right up my alley as far as the station goes. We were hurting at the time for music like that, and they really filled a void, and we couldn't find anything nationally, and the production quality was great, the songs were great that we heard, and we just felt like it was a really positive move to not only support local music in Tallahassee, but also to try to break this band Creed out of Tallahassee, which is something that had never happened for Tallahassee before.
Oh no, we're always the same. We're just normal, totally normal people, just like everybody else. It's just we got lucky, and we, instead of having to dress up in suits, we can wear a guitar and do the same thing, be successful at that.
We just like our fans, but now we're on the other side of the stage, so we're always hanging out together in some way or another. Whether we just go out and have a drink at a bar, or go out and we live in Orlando now, so go to SeaWorld or something. We'll just call each other up and be like, let's go.
The first time I played My Own Prison, I told them the day, I told them the hour that it was going to play. And I played it, and when it was over, I took a moment from answering the phones, which were already ringing, and I went on the air and I said, that's Creed, that's a song that they have called My Own Prison. We have one other song from them, which hopefully I'll get to play soon, and they're a new local band, and I think they're going to, whatever I said, they're going to do some good things for us. And then I added, they're probably, they knew that they were going to get played tonight, So they're probably sitting at home right now with a case of beer and their girlfriends trying to impress them with getting played on the radio, which was at the time exactly what they were doing. And they told the story about how I busted them at it, and they said the girls laughed at them. They called me to say, you know, thanks a lot. You just busted us exactly what we were doing. And I think it's a story that sticks in their mind, because they've said that for all the thrills, for all the Woodstocks and all the quadruple platinum records, the one thing that never leaves them is the feeling that they had the first time they heard their band on the radio.
So, yeah, I mean, we always are hanging out together and screwing around and cracking jokes, whatever. We're just normal guys, you know.
I met them over the phone, playing phone tag, trying to get them to take their picture, because I had to take 2 and 3 band pictures a week for the magazine I was working for. So they said, okay, you have to take a picture of this band. Here's their number. I don't know. His name's Scott. Give him a call. And I'm thinking, great. Okay, I'm taking another picture, you know, of another band, you know, mashed lima beans, you know, whatever, you know, and this band was called Creed. And I just thought, okay, another band picture, because that's what I did 2 and 3 times a week. So finally I got a hold of them, and they were at work, and they were working at Chili's, a couple band members. And so they said, well, we're working at Chili's, but we can take a few minutes off to, you know, and I said, okay, well, I'll meet you at Chili's. And so I went over to Chili's, and I saw some really cool old houses, maybe that we could set them up in front of, but they didn't even have time for that. And they said, oh, well, there's some railroad tracks over there. And they had no attitude when I met them. A lot of the other bands, you know, like, yo, I'm the coolest band in the world band, yo. They had no attitude or anything. They were just so mild-mannered, and I was surprised, you know, to see that. And one of the guys came out, and he had a Chili's thing on his thing, and he didn't want that to be in the picture. He said, is there any way that I could, you know, get rid of this? I don't want, and they're like, dude, there's no other shirt. You got to wear that Chili's shirt. So they wore that shirt, and they said, well, I don't know, there's some railroad tracks over there, and the train never comes by anyway. So we walked about maybe 25 yards to the railroad track, and started taking their pictures, and they were getting into it, and we were having just some fun, you know. And then we heard the train whistle blow, and it started to come, and the train started to come, and I said, just jokingly, I said, hey, looks like a train's coming in. And I was being sarcastic because I shot so many bands that, you know, so I was kidding, it looks like a train's coming in. And well, their train came in. So I enjoyed that shoot, and I just enjoyed that the train came. It was a Union Pacific, and it was hauling. It was coming boom, 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 and that was really fun, shooting with the train and everything. And they had a good time. And then they had to go because he had to go back to work on the grill. He had to go flip burgers, make salads.
It's good. It is good. It's black. I like it.
It's really neat to have Mark out there in the world from such a little town of Tallahassee. You never think somebody would make it big from Tallahassee, but he's done a great job. He was putting himself through school and trying to save the money to be able to do the band gigs as well. He would post signs up in the restaurant advertising his band was playing and where they were playing, and that was the hot spot for that evening for the entire staff. They would go and listen and support them, and everywhere they played. One of the funny thing, one of the managers used to tell him, just kidding around with him, that he would never ever make it and would harass him all the time. But Mark proved him wrong because they've done a great job. Oh, he's eating his words right about now because he's made it big.
We could have been #1 for 5 weeks and came and went, but in America it wasn't like that. It was just steady, which was awesome, because we never went #1 in America. It was always hovering around #20 for 100 weeks, but it never went to #1. That's why we never really had that overnight success.
A few years ago, they had put out My Own Prison as like a local independent release, and they brought some in to put on consignment, which basically means that we take CDs on. We don't pay for them up front, we just pay once they sell, and they brought some in, and we put them on the shelves, and it kind of just blew up from there. I think at the time when we first started, it was maybe like 5 or 10. That's kind of general practice for like a local group or whatever, just putting out their CD. We'll take on like 5 to 10 of them, see how they do, and then with that one though, the next day they were pretty much all gone, and it was kind of a phenomenon really as to how successful it was.
I know that for our station CD, Locals Only, the first local compilation we did, that sold 6,000 copies almost as quickly as we could put them on the shelves.
Well, we sold 6,000 albums, like I think it was the first month and a half of our local release. And that was incredible. That was great, for especially up here, because the music scene's not as big like it is in Central or South Florida or up in Atlanta, Georgia, or whatever. So it was really cool to see a band sell that many CDs that fast.
We took Jeff Hansen, who at the time was a club owner, John Kurzwig, who at the time was a local producer, and then a radio property, kind of married the three and put out the CD, which was a great success, probably primarily due to Creed. We bought an initial pressing that was probably 1,000 people, went out and purchased it in the first week, and we were, it was phenomenal. We didn't expect that, so we had to turn around and rush another release, and so we sold the thing for $5. There was no financial factor involved. We weren't really looking to make a lot of money off of it. It was just to support the local music scene and try to grow it and make it a better place. People started calling the radio station on, why are you playing this band Creed? Who are they? What are they all about? And as soon as they realized they were a local band, the interest nationally from the record companies really started heating up. They started calling more, asking about it, asking about how do they play, how are they drawing, are they selling, those kind of things that record companies do. It was probably 3 months after that they got signed to a record label deal.
Maxwell House.
The best is seeing them play Woodstock. That, I mean, who'd have thunk, that a local band that started here would be gracing the stage as the co-headlining act of the Chili Peppers, the closing night of Woodstock. That is still just astounds me. The flip side is that 2.5 years ago we were booking them in restaurants and nightclubs for $300 or $400 a night, and they'd play for 25 people, as if it was 2,500, but nonetheless there was 25 people there. So it's been very enlightening to see them run the gamut of going from playing no seaters to no room left in the place.
I mean, anytime you have a band that's successful, I mean, you kind of live vicariously through those guys, and we constantly talk to the managers in the band and go, who'd have thunk, a bunch of redneck managers, a bunch of redneck guys out from Florida. I mean, when they were going into this thing, I don't think anybody really thought that they would be as big. I mean, they were hoping, hey, we'll get some airplay, it'll be great, be a rock band, it'll be around. I didn't think that they would be, one of the biggest rock bands of the year. I don't think anybody suspected that. And, we were at Woodstock. I was backstage at Woodstock for the show. And we're all going, who'd have thunk? This is crazy. We're sitting eating with Robbie Krieger, the Doors, who they brought out on stage. Who'd have thunk?
I think that anything that gets you in front of 300,000 people is obviously going to help. It's never going to hurt unless you maybe incite them to riot, which fortunately Creed were not involved in doing. I think more than anything, from what I heard, the buzz here from people who were still in contact with them, I think it did a lot for their morale. as I think it was one of the biggest things that they'd ever experienced, and they'll probably put it down as probably, no matter how long they go on, it'll probably be in their top 5 of thrills. As I said, they're huge Doors fans, and they got to play with Robbie Krieger of the Doors, which to me would be, you know, like Christmas, birthday, and Halloween all rolled into one. They got to play in front of the biggest crowd that most of the bands who were there will ever see, which is of course a thrill.
Thing that I'll always remember about this band is just kind of sitting backstage, you know, and hearing, you know, Scott's in the back. He's practicing his vocal stuff. He's back there doing his little thing, and I'm thinking, this local band, what the hell is this guy doing back here? I don't get this. And he was very serious about what he was doing. He's back there practicing, and then when I was at Woodstock, he was backstage doing the same. He'd just sit back there, oh, you know, he's just practicing notes and things like that just to make sure he could hit the notes when he goes on stage. I can't do it. If I could, I'd be singing for the band. But I just remember that he would be back there making these, you know, you know, and he would more or less be doing some of the notes from the songs just to make sure that he could correctly sing, you know, whatever song that they were going to be doing. And it's the same exact thing. He was locking himself in a little room doing it, and did the same exact thing 2 years, 3 years later. He'll probably be doing it 5 years from now.
There's only one super spiritual guy in the band, that's Scott, the singer. And he was brought up in a real religious family that force-fed him a lot of religious beliefs and made him study the Bible 24 hours a day. And you know, that had a lot to do with the way his reference point to all his lyrics. So his lyrics are saying to find your own answers. Don't believe in what everybody has to tell you. But he's not doing it in a negative fashion, more of a, you know, believe in what makes you happy.
His parents basically pushed him into religion, and I think he was just basically pushing away to make up his own mind, you know. So that was what a lot of the song felt come from, you know, was from that struggle from growing up and everything. And I understand it because I was kind of the same way growing up, and a lot of people I know from down here are.
You know, each song has its own motivation, you know, and where it's coming from. I think that a lot of times people get caught up in 2 or 3 of the songs that are kind of critiquing religion or searching for the lifelong question of whether God exists. And they like to pigeonhole the whole album and think that that's all we're about, or that's what every song entails, and it's not.
You know, the rest of us aren't. You know, my parents were pretty lenient with church. You know, I went to church maybe once in the past 8 years, so you can't call me I mean, we're all Christians, but does that make us a Christian band? I guess so, but we don't promote Christianity.
You know, as far as comparisons to Nirvana or anyone else you want to come, I mean, Kurt Cobain's lyrics were very much introspective, very much about the deepest parts of himself, as I think the lyrics of other bands that broke out of his scene, Pearl Jam, Eddie Vedder writes very introspective lyrics. Those are certainly some comparisons that have been made, but I happen to know that the first album was written by Scott Stapp from an internal perspective. He probably, I mean, he's very young. Sophomore albums tend to be more, after a band breaks and they get to tour the world and become a little more world-wise, they come back and they usually write lyrics that are a little more all-encompassing. But as far as his background being reflected in the lyrics, you know, as much as the instrumentalist backgrounds are reflected in the way that they play, I think it comes from the same source.
No, he's a great writer and has a lot of issues that he touches on, and I think that reflects on the success of the band. You know, we're a rock and roll band, but we have a message in the lyrics. You know, it's you know, I think we cover a broad spectrum of topics. It's just because of my background, you know, there's still certain things in my life that I'm searching and thinking about. And a couple of the songs on My Own Prison album deal with some of those fears and concerns and questions. But you know, my inspiration, I can't really pinpoint what inspires me, because a lot of times as an artist you feel like you're kind of overtaken by something for moments at a time, and you know, I write, and a lot of times I don't even know what I've written until after I step away and read it. You know, it just comes from somewhere else deep down, you know, it's subconscious.
Young people are angry about a lot of things. They're upset about a lot of things. They're frightened about a lot of things, and they're anxious about a lot of things, and they always have been. And that's obviously going to come out in the music. If you go deeper into that side of yourself, the way that I think they do with their lyrics, or at least did on the first album, obviously it's going to reflect in the music.
The search for truths and understanding why people do what they do, and you know, just basic thoughts about things, and where we come from and where we're going, and what motivates us to act certain ways and do certain things. I think that's typically my inspiration. Just very, very human concepts and thought processes, stuff like that.
Scott, I think he just thinks too much.
I see so many bands, and when I watch Creed, Scott just brings so much emotion out of him. It's kind of like Tool. Not many people look at the players really. It's the lead singer that they're more interested in. It seems to be that way, and he pulls out so much emotion. Other guys, I don't want to say this like this, but are more like pawns for him, really. Mark writes the songs with him. They write all the songs together. And Mark is a very important part of Creed. I mean, that's what gets their sound, that's what gels them. The bass player and the drummer basically fill the parts. And I mean, love the guys to death, but that's pretty much the truth of the matter. But like I said, when you see them live, you just see the emotion coming up out of Scott. You don't really watch anything else, really, because he's so much always just wide open in there, and you feel it.
It's easy to misunderstand confidence as arrogance, but each of the guys in the band tend to have a very good self-esteem, both about themselves and what they do, and for that reason, I think, you know, it will allow them to reach, you know, whatever levels. The first record blew up a lot bigger than I think even they expected, and with that kind of response, the anticipation on the next record should at least double, you know. So, you know, will they have a 25-year career? I don't know. Can they stay healthy? You know, there's so many variables in the market. It depends. If anyone, yes, they are capable of being the ones that do it. But, you know, I wish I could say. I wish I had my magic ball.
Let me go back a bit. I thought the timing of the first album was horrible. I was fighting at the time, the management and the record label. I thought, what are you guys doing? Nixon's record's coming out. There's a Bush record coming out. This is the worst thing you guys could do, because they're rock bands. And I was wrong. I didn't know what I was doing. So in this one, I think it's a great time. There's obviously a big push. There's a lot of interest in this band. The first single is it's been very well received. Everybody's excited about it. I think that's, you know, it's going to be a big anchor in the ending part of the year.
I wouldn't count it as a make or break, because it took so long for them to get their first break. Really, Wind Up Records did a fantastic job of dragging them into the attention of radio stations. This CD, in some ways, it looks like they really have a strong out-of-the-gate opening with this one. Not only because I've heard it and it's a very good record, but also I've heard their involvement in some soundtracks that are coming up. It doesn't appear that they're being viewed as a band that, how to word it, they're not being viewed as a band that has to prove something again. They're being viewed as, thank goodness, they've got something else for us to play.
They seem to have stuck together. In fact, I was talking to a friend of ours that ran into one of them at the game in Arizona at the Fiesta Bowl, and said they were really excited about the future and everything. And it seemed that, you know, I'm impressed every time I see them on MTV or I see they're on a soundtrack or something. I'm really happy for them.
Everybody said, you know, now's the time. This is going to be it. This band is going to break big. MTV is going to jump all over this band. Radio stations are certainly going to support this band. You know, it's the time to put the face on the band. You know, for a band that sold 4 million records, you know, they couldn't get picked out of a lineup in certain cities, but they sure have sold a lot of records. I think this is just the next step for them.
I heard my first one last night, and actually I enjoyed it. I mean, Mark's still the same old guy. He's putting the hooks in there like I like, not playing, you know, your norm that you hear on the radio. And actually, I think they've grown up a little bit. Sounds like they've progressed a little bit from their first album. You know, that's just from one song. But I do know that some of the songs that's on the album, I talked to Scott Phillips like a month ago, the drummer, and he said that some of the ones that we were doing on the road, that they started adding to, that were written in the van while we were driving from gig to gig, were going to be on the album. So I haven't heard those yet, so I'm kind of excited to hear those. But the one I did hear last night was really cool. I enjoyed it.
So, I mean, and the first single's great. I mean, the record's really, I'm probably one of the few people that's heard their whole record. It's really good. I'm not just saying that as a fan. I mean, it's a really good radio record.
The songs I've heard off of the new album are actually stronger than the songs off of the first album. They can go as far as they managed to take it. These are people I really think that I can say that about.
I just remember the band as being fun. Everybody liked them, and it was a fun atmosphere when they played here. And it was a high energy fun too. And they liked what they were doing, and that was apparent.
When I got, you know, the Creed got a hold of them, I was kind of like tired and, okay, here's another band, you know, here we are, you know, the little pester band, and they turned out to be just very laid back, unassuming guys. They were just nice.
I guess it would be all the fun times, because we had a lot of fun times. I mean, even though I know it's hard starting from the beginning and everything, but we all loved it so much that even when we were on the road for 18 straight hours in a van, cramped up, pulling a trailer, we laughed. We had fun. We played music together. We'd go to a whole hotel room, and it'd be like me and the light guy and like Scott Stapp in the stairwell of the hotel, where it's all concrete and it's real reverby. We're in there playing, me and the light guy's playing, and he's just singing it. I mean, all the time like that. We'd take advantage of the times of what we were doing and go see this and go see that. And I guess that would be it, the happiness. I mean, it was a lot of like family, I guess, feeling.
Sometime early in the year 2000, if the world's still here.